In 1942, the Pacific. The Imperial Japanese Navy was invincible. Or so they believed. In 6 months, they'd conquered half of Asia. From the smoke of Pearl Harbor to the surrender of Singapore. They had never known defeat. The world trembled at their feet. The commanders of this fleet believed the Americans were finished. They thought the war was already won. But history loves a cruel joke, for at the pinnacle of victory often lie the seeds of destruction. This is a story about arrogance, about how an empire, blinded by hubris, lost everything in just 5 minutes. Admiral Yamamoto sat aboard his flagship, the Yamato. He was Japan's god of war, but a silent plague was spreading among his staff. Historians call it the victory disease. The symptoms: blind confidence and utter contempt for the enemy. In the eyes of the Japanese command, Americans were soft, a nation of spoiled rich boys, lacking the will to fight. Fragile. This mindset infected every battle plan. They set a perfect trap. Target: Midway. The final gateway, but the island was just bait. The real goal was to lure the remnants of the US Pacific Fleet out of port and wipe them from existence. It was a mismatch of epic proportions. Japan committed 4 heavy carriers: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, the most powerful maritime force on Earth, and the US Navy, down to scrap metal. Only 2 operational carriers, and 1 wreck the Japanese assumed was already sunk, the USS Yorktown. The Japanese didn't even bother to change their radio codes. They believed the Americans were too stupid to understand them. They saw this mission as an armed parade, a simple hunt. But they forgot the first rule of the hunter: never underestimate your prey. Terrial War began long before the first shot was fired. Not on the ocean, but in a basement. At Pearl Harbor, no sunlight, just mountains of cigarette butts and cold coffee. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort, an intelligence genius in an old bathrobe, searching for truth in the static. Japanese cables kept repeating one code. Washington believed it was the Aleutian Islands. Some even thought it was the West Coast, but Rochefort trusted his gut. AF was Midway. It was a gamble that would decide the fate of the nation. If he was wrong, Hawaii would be left wide open. He needed proof. So, they set a trap. The U.S. sent a fake message via underwater cable. Midway freshwater distillation plant broken. 2 days later, the Japanese intercepted it and radioed Tokyo. AF is short on fresh water. Bingo. Rochefort smiled. He didn't just crack the location. He calculated the date, June 4 th. He even knew the enemy's exact order of battle. Admiral Nimitz now had the god's eye view, but he faced a massive problem. The USS Yorktown was crippled from a previous battle. Experts said repairs would take 3 months. Nimitz gave them 3 days. It was an impossible mission, but the workers at Pearl Harbor performed a miracle, with steel plates still being welded, with repair crews still hammering away inside the hull. The Yorktown set sail. Now, it was 3 carriers against 4. The U.S. was still the underdog, but they had a weapon Japan didn't. They had the enemy's script. The U.S. fleet quietly slipped into the waters northeast of Midway, a spot codenamed Point Luck. They lay in ambush, waiting for the arrogant giant to walk into his own grave. June 4th, 1942. The sun rises. The first wave of 108 Japanese warplanes roars into the sky. Target: Midway base. Commander Nagamo held back half his aircraft, loaded with torpedoes, just in case the U.S. fleet appeared. 6:20. Bombs fall on Midway. Flames engulf the defenses, but the American resistance is ferocious. The Japanese flight leader radios back. Second attack wave needed. This was the first twist of fate. Nagamo hesitated. Scout planes had found no U.S. ships. The sea was silent. If he didn't bomb the island again, the landing troops would face a massacre. 7:15. Nagamo gives the fateful order. Remove torpedoes. Reload with land bombs. The hangars instantly turn into chaos. Heavy torpedoes are rolled away. High explosive bombs are hoisted up. Mechanics are drenched in sweat. Suddenly, a delayed Japanese scout plane sends a shocking message. One American warship sighted. The air on the bridge turns to ice. An American fleet, here Nagamo, is trapped in a dilemma. His planes are loaded with land bombs, useless against moving ships. If he doesn't switch back, it's suicide. The order changes again. Stop bring back the torpedoes. The hangars descend into total anarchy. To save time, the unmounted bombs aren't returned to the magazine. They are stacked loosely in the corners of the hangar. The Akagi has just become a floating powder keg. At this moment of confusion, the American attack begins. It wasn't a coordinated symphony. It was a tragic suicide charge. The US torpedo squadrons arrived before the main force. No fighter cover. Flying obsolete planes. Slow as sitting ducks, the Japanese Zeros swarmed him like wolves. It was a slaughter. One by one, American planes turned into fireballs and hit the water. 15 planes launched, all destroyed. Not a single torpedo hit its mark. The sole survivor floated in the ocean, watching the Japanese fleet sail on, untouched. The Japanese commanders exhaled. They laughed. It confirmed their bias. Americans couldn't fight. The attack was amateurish. Lady Luck was still on Japan's side, but to hunt down the low-flying torpedo bombers, the Zeros, protecting the fleet, had all dropped down to sea level. Bloodthirsty and distracted. They forgot to look up. At 20,000 feet, above the clouds, the sky directly above the Japanese carriers, was now a fatal vacuum. 10:20 a.m. Nagumo believes the crisis is over. The planes on deck are reloaded with torpedoes. Engines are revving. Just 5 more minutes, and this invincible armada will launch and wipe out the American fleet. Victory is within reach, but above the clouds, the U.S. Commander Wade McCluskey is desperate. His dive bomber squadron is lost. Fuel gauges are hitting empty. Most men would turn back. Didn't. He spotted a white wake on the ocean. A lone Japanese destroyer, racing to catch up with the main fleet. It was like an arrow, pointing straight to the heart of the enemy. McCluskey decided to follow it. 10:22 a.m. The clouds break open. God reveals a terrifying scene below. For Japanese carriers, decks packed with planes, fuel, and bombs. Completely exposed. It was a textbook ambush. McCluskey orders, attack. Death screams from the sky. U.S. bombers dive at 70 degrees. Japanese lookouts scream in horror. Dive bombers. But it is too late. The first bomb pierces the deck of the Kaga, igniting the mountains of loose ordnance in the hangar. It wasn't just an explosion. It was a volcanic eruption. Next, the Akagi. A single bomb drills perfectly into the elevator shaft, triggering a chain reaction. Finally, the Soryu. From 10:22 to 10:27. Just 5 minutes. Not even enough time to smoke a cigarette. 3 supercarriers turn into burning infernos. The backbone of the Imperial Japanese Navy snapped in 5 minutes. Nagamo stands frozen on the bridge, watching his fleet turn to ash. He cannot comprehend what is happening. The dream of invincibility is satirit. The battle wasn't over. Japan's last carrier, Hiru, attempts a counterattack. They crippled the USS Yorktown. The stubborn American ship finally sinks, but the U.S. response is merciless. That afternoon, American bombers find the Hiru. 4 bombs end Japan's last hope. 4-1. A devastating score. Night falls. For massive bonfires burn on the Pacific Ocean. Over 3,000 elite Japanese sailors and pilots are dead. Veterans who could never be replaced. The news reaches the Yamato. Yamamoto's face turns ashen. The man who boasted he would dictate peace terms in the White House can only whisper one word: retreat. These amateur American kids had defeated the Imperial Samurai. After Midway, Japan lost the strategic initiative. They went from conquerors to defenders and never won another decisive naval battle. This battle changed the course of World War II and the course of history. Those steel beasts lying in the deep remain there to this day. They are wreckage of war, but also silent monuments, reminding us strength matters. But on the battlefield, arrogance is a deadlier enemy than fire. They awakened a giant and taught the giant how to fight. And the ocean will always remember this costly lesson.